concerns, and there should be, about governance issues at the state broadcaster over the years. It's difficult to tell the one leadership crisis from the other, isn't it? Well, the SOS Coalition and Media Monitoring Africa says they're appalled, deeply worried about the SABC's Group Chief Executive Officer, who has now been designated, listen to this, now designated as the board. This was apparently announced by the Communications Minister. Let's discuss the impact of what this is having on the state broadcaster. More than 16 weeks without having a board at the broadcaster. Michael Markowitz is a former board member, joins us now. Michael, good of you to come in. And when I mentioned it before, I didn't want to use the word Titanic, but I imagine just like a ship without a captain, eventually something's going to go wrong, isn't it?
Well, that's very unfortunate, the case. I mean, the SABC is not just any public entity. The SABC has a special role in South African society, and therefore that is why the Parliament and statutes have set out exactly how a board should be appointed. Now, Gareth, my board term ended on the 15th of October 2022. I knew 5 years ago exactly when my term was ending. So therefore, it's really disappointing that different arms of the state, both Parliament and the Presidency, have led to what is, on Wednesday, will be a 4-month delay.
Any ideas to what's led to this delay? Because I was under the impression this was being dealt with urgently. There were commissions in place and interviews for board members were being done, and yet here we are with nothing.
Well, I think it's a combination, to be fair and to give the proper context, I think it's a combination of factors. Firstly, Parliament started the appointment process at least a month too late. Once they started that process a month too late, the whole thing ran late. And then once they'd shortlisted 37 people, and they shortlisted these people on around about early September. So you've had people who've been shortlisted for almost 5 months. Then we were told that there was a delay in vetting by the State Security Agency. And that apparently took another 2 months for that reason. So by the time we got to the 12 names getting to the president, which apparently was sent to him on the 20th of December 2022, they'd already been 2 months late. Now those names have been sitting with the president for another 2 months. So that's why we've got this 4-month gap where there's been no accounting authority for the SABC. And obviously it's of huge concern. You know, when we left the SABC as a board, one expected one would pass the baton to a new board coming in on the 16th of October. We had drafted a comprehensive handover report so that the new board would be empowered to deal with the pressing issues urgently, and unfortunately that hasn't happened.
Yeah, there was nobody to hand it to. You walk out of the lift, walking into a board meeting, here's the baton, and we have awkward crickets. There's no one there to pick it up at all. And the problem, I would imagine, is a big issue. Is, as you say, we can't see the SABC as a regular broadcaster. There is a public mandate as well. Is this a failure on their responsibility to the public to not get this done?
Well, I think it is a failure of the state. You know, the state has 3 arms: the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive. And here, 2 arms of the state are involved. One is Parliament, and they've got really one job here, and it's all set out. Unlike any other public entity in South Africa, the SABC has a public participation process. There's shortlisted. There's interviews that are public. I'm not sure of any other public entity that has its board appointed in such a transparent way. And therefore, it's critical, therefore, that these processes should be run on time. And that was a concern. And then for it to be sitting with the president for 2 months, we've heard various reasons why that is the case. We're told by the president's spokesman that the government gazette printers were not open when he got the names on the 20th of December. We thought, therefore, he was ready to appoint. And then we've heard there's been some objections and he's getting legal advice, which he's obviously entitled to get. But one doesn't sense that the issue's been treated with any urgency, given the situation that the SABC is in. We all know the SABC is suffering from years of mismanagement before 2017. We try to stabilize it as the previous board, but it needs urgent attention, and one needs to look at revenue, one needs to look at the funding model. So there's a big role for a board to play.
And it begs the question, doesn't it? Then if we knew, and you knew at the time when your term as a board member was going to come to an end, Clearly, there is a lot of planning in general that goes into these handovers. Why not ask your board and yourselves to stay on until a new board is ready? Yes, it's not ideal. It should have been done on time. It wasn't. But stay on board until we're ready to go. Would that not have been an option?
Unfortunately, the legislation doesn't allow for it. The legislation says you can serve for 5 years maximum. There's no extension of the time. And therefore, that makes it even more important why one doesn't want to get it wrong, because one is well aware that should you miss the 16th of October, the SABC doesn't have a board. And, you know, a lot of people have expressed concerns that the SABC CEO may have been appointed with the powers of the board. That was based on a statement by the minister after the SONA. I read a report in the Sunday Times this morning that apparently that has not happened yet. But either way, a lot of people have the view, and I share that view, that it would not be lawful for the SABC CEO to be given the powers of the board. Normally that can be done in terms of the Public Finance Management Act, but not with a body like the SABC, which has very specific, detailed basis for an independent appointment process and leading to a public, transparent process where a board runs the SABC and not just one executive. The law that the SABC is founded on, the Broadcasting Act, does not provide for any executive to have the powers of the board.
Correct, and nor should they. You should never have that much power vested with one individual. We know how badly that can go as well. As I say goodbye to you, though, what now happens? Rudderless, captainless. What is a timeline to your mind? I know you're going to say immediately, but that's not a reality. What is the timeline for this? And what is the kind of damage that's being done at the SABC now by not having a board running it? What's the knock-on effect of that?
Well, your first question is the timeline. The 12 names are sitting with the president. So the president has the discretion to appoint those persons immediately. You know, for example, if there are objections to 1 or 2 people, then why not appoint the 10 people to constitute the board urgently? So that's the first thing. That can happen immediately. And the impact, you know, is very concerning the longer it goes on, because the management, and this is not the fault of SABC management, they are not the ones who appoint the board. They don't have that oversight body that needs to approve major developments, major contracts, major policy. So I think the sooner it happens, the better. I don't think we'll ever get those 4 months back, unfortunately, but one would just hope that this now is being treated seriously and urgently, and the 12 are appointed as soon as possible.
I appreciate you coming in to join us this afternoon and highlighting what I think many people might not realize is such an important body of the SABC, like a board, and I think many people wouldn't have realized how long it's been without it. And Michael, I appreciate you coming in to speak to us. Michael Markowitz, SABC, former SABC board member, was highlighting the importance of the work they were doing, trying to hand over, as they were obliged to after a 5-year period, onto a new board. But it seems that is just not the case at the moment. Yet we know the president is busy with SONA, the SONA reply, and is going to be heading off to Addis Ababa as well. But what we do not know is when the next SABC board is coming in. My thanks to Michael Markowitz this afternoon here on eNCA.